He needs no introduction, ladies and gentlemen. Peter de Almeida.
Comrades and guests, I'm supposed to take about 20 minutes to deliver the so-called keynote address, but considering it's 5 to 12 and some of you are quite wilting visually, visibly, I'll try and keep it short. But I thought I'll speak about a few things that I think you might be interested to know about what has happened in the last 30 years since we all had this strike. So Ananda, thank you for this opportunity, and let me get straight into the point. So let's see what has happened in the last 30 years. Let's start with banks. Now we all know that banks have two things. Their income comes from interest income and from fee-based income, payments. So if you look at the banks today, on the interest side, let's say, what they are doing. I'll tell you, banks have diversified a lot, but some banks have been truly disruptive about what they are doing. And this disruption in the banking sector is happening largely with technology. And we are in that technology business now, that business that we are in. I'll take an extreme example of a bank in the USA that completely disrupted the traditional banking as we know it. And that bank is called ING Savings Direct. And that is run by a gentleman called Arcadia Kuhlman. You all should search and read about him. Very interesting. He started 11 years ago, this bank. And today, it's the 15th largest bank in the United States of America. 7.7 million customers, 92 billion in assets, dollars. And there are about almost 10,000 banks in the United States. 15th in 11 years. What is his model? How did he disrupt banking like this? No branches. Direct to customer, all through online banking. Point number one. Second, no advice and I will tell you how to increase your wealth. Nothing. Standardized product. Where did he learn this from? Retail business. He said, I don't want to disrupt banking. I don't want to be just another savings bank. I want to disrupt. To disrupt something, I can't go and look at what has been prevailing for the last 200 years. So he went and looked at the retail business. Fruit sellers. Very short standard product. Just a few differences. Very short shelf life. Take it, go. So he said, I am going to let the 9,400 other banks serve the 30 million rich Americans. I am going to serve 270 million Main Street Americans. Very straightforward. And with that, completely disrupted the banking business. And when somebody asked him, does relationship count? He said something that you will not think of saying. He said, if you want relationship, go and get a dog. I don't want relationship with my customers. No relationship, no wasting time. Standard product, but at the lowest cost. Good for the customer, good for him. And that's how we built this. So that's the disruption in the banking industry. The second disruption, that's on the interest side. Second disruption on the payment side. Today, I think you all know, payment transactions are very big in banks. 1/3 of the bank's profits in some of the US banks come from payments. Guess who is challenging the banks on the payments today? Not other banks. Mobile companies. They are taking your payment away from you. You don't even know it. But look who else is coming after the payment. How many of you use Apple? A few, right. Not many, but you have heard of Apple. Apple is a company that makes extremely user-friendly, excellent experience devices. That's what they are known for. Not only technology, but design. Recently, they launched 2 products. iPhone 6 and the iWatch. Everybody is looking at this. iWatch, fantastic. What was the real announcement? A lot of people missed it. And that's the announcement that will come after the banks. Apple announced a thing called Apple Pay. I'll come to that in a minute. Apple Pay. So who was at the launch of Apple, not computer wizards. Designers came because they like to see how Apple designs. Other people who came were CEOs of banks like JP Morgan, credit card companies like Visa, and so on and so forth. What has Apple done? Apple has created an ecosystem where they brought together the 11 largest US card issuers, representing 83% of the market, and big companies like Walgreens and McDonald's that have about 220,000 stores in the US. And how do you pay? With Apple Pay. No credit card. Can you imagine the volume of money they take away from the banking business? That is what, folks, we don't understand. We are still thinking current account, savings account, fixed deposit, exchange rate. Others are coming after the banking business. So that is the disruption on the banking side, and how far. And this is all done with technology, mobile. Everything is mobile. ING Savings Direct. If I am an account holder of ING Savings and say Jnanadasa, comrade, is an account holder, I can transfer money, I can put in the amount, put in his number, and there's an application called Tap. I just tap his phone and the money goes. All of you are not needed. Shobha, you are not needed to do this transaction. Little by little, a lot of the jobs in the banking industry will go away. And our banks are a little backward, so we are safe. But the disruption is happening very fast in other countries. Contrast that with what's happening in the unions today. It's a very dismal picture. Because like Jayakodi said, the unions over the years have been systematically undermined by the big companies, by business, systematically. They do this with a lot of thought, not like us. On the other hand, unions have also self-destructed because we have not adopted. Because evolution is not the survival of the fittest, but those who adapt. We have not adapted. We are still remaining in the old world, and we are broken up. Nothing, no semblance of what it was those days, and we are unable to put up a united front against the banks and to see how we can go after these super profits that banks are making today. So unions, because of lack of leadership, lack of education, lack of wanting to change, innovate, do things differently, stuck with the same demands. Cashier, operator, rupial 50කින් වැඩි කරන්න, cost of living, match over. But look who is understanding this. The capitalist class and big business understands the importance of employees better than we do. And I'll give you a quick example. Now, I was reading a very interesting survey done by a company called Open Matters with Deloitte. I was amazed to find that in the good old days, you all have all done finance. If you look at a balance sheet of a company, because it has asset-based companies, right? If you look at a balance sheet of the company, you know the market value of that company. Today, I was shocked to read Standards & Poor 500 companies they interviewed. 83% of the value of a company is outside your balance sheet. It's in what they call intangibles. So that is not captured. And one of the key things in intangibles are people, customers and employees. Now, Mr. Chandraratna and Egga Gunathinga didn't understand this. They were small-minded people. They did not see the importance of employees. And they held out for 100 rupees of about how many officers were there at that time, Anand? 126 multiplied by 100. How much? You do the math. They couldn't see the value of the officers. And these are smart people like Anand and a whole bunch of you here who could have contributed immensely to the value of the bank. They never saw them as value-creating assets. And they treated them in the good old-fashioned way and said, 100 rupees then the bag. They never saw that. But today, I was interested to read this book written by a professor in the University of Massachusetts. Very interesting topic. Profits without prosperity. Now, this is published in Forbes. This is not a socialist. He is talking from a capitalist economic point of view. He is saying today, companies who are so crazy about the share price and creating value for the shareholders are in fact destroying value. Because in the old days, 45 to 1970, companies, what did they do? They retained money, they reinvested. Massive capital expenditure, growing the banks, hiring good people, paying them good incomes and so on. Today, just to keep the share price up, what do? Downsize and distribute the money mainly to shareholders. But he goes on to say, because of this, there is no value creation, but value erosion by companies. They're acting against their own interest. And he talks about the inequities this has caused, income inequities. Between 78 and 213, the top CEOs in America, of the in America, their compensation went up by 937%. Workers during that period went up by, take a guess, 10%. Income inequity. And the capitalists have figured out this cannot sustain business over the long term. I was talking to Shobha. She was saying after 30 years, her salary is 107,000 rupees. Now some companies have understood this. Take my company. We started a company, technology company 6 years ago. 13 people, today we have 120 people. How do we do this? Give you one example. There was a young man who joined our company. He was working for e-channeling. He was a call center agent. He was getting a salary of 15,000 rupees. He came to us. He said, I want to work at Enable. I'll come for 10,000 rupees. We said, come. Cut a long story short. Today, 4 years later, I'm sorry to say, Shobha, he earns 150,000 rupees. Would you like to join us? Why? Because he knew a technology that was changing the industry called virtualization. I don't want to go into that. At Commercial Bank, we did that. We saved you guys money. Today they're running 100 applications in 4 servers, in 4 computers. In the good old days, they would have run 100 in 100 computers, which means power and cooling costs and all of that. Ashok is a good comrade from the IT industry. He's smiling. He knows what I'm saying. So we saved money for Commercial Bank. But the point is that does not get trickled down to Shobha. So my point is we recognize how this employee is creating that value I spoke of balance sheet value. That is not captured from your salary, folks. Your salary is not the value that you're creating. Now, Karl Marx understood this when he said, who is creating this surplus value? The workers. But today, people like this professor are saying, and I'll quote him, workers have claims on profits that are at least, mark the word, at least as strong as the shareholders. Now what are you doing at Commercial Bank? What's your profit? How much? 10 billion rupees? Correct? Marianne? 10 billion? 10 billion. And we are talking about potty little salary increases, grading. Even those demands we want are insignificant. Who cares? Shoe allowance. We are taking the crumbs that fall off. Can I have this crumb? Can I have that crumb? Not the big fat cake that's on the table. So they have understood this. Sadly, Commercial Bank management did not understand this. They did not have the wisdom to understand the role that these officers can play in the transformation of the bank, because these are all very smart people. And they are now all in top jobs. Most of them are in senior jobs in other places. So having said that, let me quickly move to the question of, so what is this? I think in the long run, it's a question of leadership. And I will end my talk on this topic, leadership. What is leadership? I do not think that the unions today have leadership. And I shouldn't speak ill of those who have preceded us. But even Comrade Balatampo, he was a great leader. But Jayakodi will be the first to agree with me that he did not create a leadership, because he was so dominant and so forceful. He did not let others emerge with the ideas. This is what companies are doing today, like us. We go to our employees and say, give us your ideas, innovate, join us. But the bank union at that time, I must say, although Ravi Molligode is not here, he created a new leadership because he brought in people like Ananda, who was 26, I was 22, and Hemasiri from People's Bank, he got Jnanadasa from NSB, he got Bandara from People's Bank, and, correct, Hemasiri, Jnanadasa, you will agree with me, we had a leadership, correct? Different points of view. And they used to call me, me tamposadarage, me ahagana avilla metana apata kiyanne no, and they used to attack me. But once we made a decision, but all the points of view were heard, and the decision was made, it was carried out by everybody. I'll give you one example of that kind of open leadership that can change the course of history even. I wouldn't put it that broadly, but can have a big impact. The example I take is when Jnanadas and Hemasiri and all those folks and Ratnayaka were all dismissed by Ronnie DeMille because we went on a walkout, mind you, at 4:30 on a Friday evening, and we thought let's cause as least disturbance as possible, and we did walkout at 4:30 on a Friday. All the leaders of the State Bank sacked.
70.
How many?
70.
17 sacked on the spot. Vacated post. So action started, all that. Finally, it was getting a little difficult for them. A resolution came to the executive committee that we accept some conditions set out by the bank to take them back. One of those was good behavior. Good behavior for 6 months. Now the resolution was put to the vote. I said, I don't think we should accept this. A dangerous precedent. None of you have behaved badly. We carried out a decision of the union. We should not accept this. Fortunately, N.B. Paul, my co-worker at State Bank of India, seconded the motion. Motion was on the table. Both Ranjit Fernando, Bank of Ceylon, and People's Bank, Bandar, Ravi Molligade, all generally in favor of accepting some of those conditions. I'm sorry? So, because we had an open leadership, it was put to the vote and discussed. Little by little, people started changing. Unanimously decided, reject the conditions. And the good news is that everyone went back to work. See, Ratnaka, you remember this. With no conditions. Only thing, no salary for that period. We said, don't worry, union can pay them the salary. Monetary matter is different. Principle is what matters. Now, it's only because that kind of openness was there. Today, I'm sad to say, we don't have that kind of enlightened view of the world. And this is why I believe unions are suffering. But I think even in the banking sector, they are also extremely backward. I don't look upon most banks as providing that kind of innovative Arcadia Kuhlman, ING direct savings type of visionary thinking, or the visionary thinking of this professor in Massachusetts, who understands the value of employees in creating value for their shareholders. So, I think there is a lot to be done there. They are backward, they are bureaucratic, they are hierarchical. And here is what the gentleman, the CEO of Nike says, when companies become like that. You see why? Banks today enjoy a massive spread in Sri Lanka. Correct, Marianne? 6-7 points spread. In other countries, it's sub 1%. So you can put anybody in the bank, they'll make money. They'll make money. But the spread is huge. But it is this very complacency and this bureaucracy that will finally be their end. Because here is what the CEO of Nike says about believing in your own success of today when others are going to disrupt your business. Nike CEO Mark Parker says, one of my fears, now mind you, Nike went from a footwear company to a digital company, and we don't get into that, we can discuss that later. He said, one of my fears is being the slow, constipated, bureaucratic company that is happy with its success. This will end up being your death in the end. So this is true of companies, this is true of trade unions. We are complacent, we sit with what we know, we are not looking into the changes that can come. So change is inevitable, how can we provide a leadership to understand and bring in smart people, delegate to them, and let them think for themselves. That is what is missing. And so I come to the end of my speech. Yes. Ananda reminded me about two incidents that he specifically wanted me to speak because of time, and I've already taken 20 minutes. I'll wind up. On the learnings from the strike action. One is a learning from management. Now, Bala told me when I was going for the negotiation at the Labor Department, he said, Peter, pull back. Unconditionally call off your strike. Unconditionally. Don't get into a negotiation on how to end the strike. Unconditionally call it off. The threat of the resumption of strike remains. Then you say, what's from you? I couldn't carry the executive committee with me on that. Unfortunately, we got into a big discussion on how to end the strike and not talk about the demands. In that conversation, one of the sticking points was Jainuddin. So, Bala had told me a story how in the CMU, there was a guy who in the strike, he was in the picket line, a burger gentleman, in the old days, Employees Federation. You see, when there's a strike, when you form a picket line, nobody can cross it. Those strike breakers and blacklegs have to come early. So when he was on the picket line, long live CM and all, the CEO, Sudha, walked in. He whacked him with his cane on his back because he was now charged, sacked. So when the discussion went to end, Bala had told him, look, you understand this happened in the heat of the moment. We are ready to give you an apology. Now that fellow, enlightened leader, he said, okay, Bala, let him apologize. That's done. Finished. Mr. Egga Gunatunga, on the other hand, I called Sriyan out. Sriyan was the secretary of the Employees Federation. I said, Sriyan, I took that example. I said, we can get Jainuddin to apologize. Because he never said anything. He put up a notice that had an insinuation about Mr. Egga Gunatunga. So Sriyan said, that's a fair proposition. He went back. He came out again and said, I'm sorry, Peter. I can't seem to get Egga to agree to this. Now, that's an example. The second example is Upali, who was the personal manager of Hatton National Bank. Both banks held out. When he saw the strike action, he told me, some years later, I think I'd left the union, he said, Peter, we didn't want to make the mistake that Commercial Bank made and the destruction it caused to the image of that bank, over 100 rupees. So, these are important lessons to learn. And the lesson for us, we also got a few things wrong, like that calling off. What is that leadership, that important moment when you make that smart strategic decision? That's very key. Now to the end, two things I want to say. It's very significant that two ladies are over there standing side by side. Chandra and Srima. Now, Ananda, in the best of times, is a difficult bugger. You see? Because he is a strong personality. And he wants to get things done. But with his physical limitations, he can be a pain in the ass. And it is at times like this that we as unionists forget humanity. And I must say, Chandra, for you to stand by him and see him through this difficult time, and this brings tears to my eyes. This is what women do. They sustain us as mothers, as sisters, maybe even as in-laws. And it is this kind of human sustenance that keeps people like Ananda going to do what he's doing today. And that comes from a very fine human quality that we don't remember sometimes. And I share this with my staff, called Karunava. We don't have Karunava anymore. We have become inhuman. So, Chandra and Srima, I knew you as a lawyer in a white sari, very provocatively worn, I must say. So, that's the figure I remember. And from that time to now, the way you have stood by your brother and encouraged him while being, keeping him also on the, the Karunava for him, the support you have given him to do this So that is something that we must acknowledge. But lastly, everybody spoke about inequities, challenges. Shastra made a very fine talk about humanity. Question is, what are we going to do? Are we going to retire and just forget about the rest of the world? Or are we going to take on one iniquity? Whatever it may be. A child without food, a woman abused, a disabled man trying to send his children to school, whatever. Water problem, kidney problem, anything. Pick one of thousands of iniquities that plague this country and the universe. You have learned something, you have earned, you have got something in your head, which is what people need, not handouts, not money. Can you use that talent to address at least one iniquity? Even if it is something to do with your church, with your temple, with your community, can we contribute in some way for the betterment of humanity? Then we can say that Ananda's book and our struggle and us coming together today would have some human purpose. Thank you very much.